Excuse me. Chapter 7. 2 days later on Wednesday, Annie managed to get out of her school long enough after lunchtime to smuggle me into the cafeteria. A huge but shabby room, as crowded as Penn Station or Grand Central at Christmas. While we were sitting there trying to hear what two others were saying, what we were saying to each other, a tall, gangling kid unfolded himself from his chair, took at least a foot of heavy chain out of his pocket, and started whirling it around his head, yelling something nobody paid attention to. Nobody paid any attention to. In fact, no one paid any attention to the boy himself either. In fact, no one paid any attention to the boy himself either, except for a few people who moved out of range of the swinging chain. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe anyone would do that. In the first place, and I also couldn't believe that if someone did, everyone would just ignore it. Ignore him. I guess I must have been staring, because Annie stopped in the middle of what she was saying and said, You're wondering why that guy is swinging that chain, right? Right, I said, trying to be as casual about it as she was. Nobody knows why he does it. But in a few minutes, one of the carpentry teachers will come along and take him away. There, see? A large man in what I guess was in a shop apron, came in, ducked under the flying chain, and grabbed the kid around the waist. Right away, the kid froze, and the chain went clattering to the floor. The man picked it up, stuffed it into his pocket, and led the kid out of the cafeteria. Annie, I said wildly. You mean he doesn't? You mean he does that often? Why don't they take the chain away from him? I mean, permanently. Why don't they? I don't know. You did mean he does it all the time, didn't you? Annie gives me a partly amused, partly a sympathetic look, and put down her chocolate milk carton. He does it all the time, once a week or so. They do take the chain from him, but I guess he has an endless supply. I don't know why they don't do anything else about him or for him, but they don't seem to. She smiled. You see why sometimes I prefer white birds and unicorns and knights, I answered. Good Lord. When I first came here, Annie said, I used to go home and cry at night. But after about 2 months of being terrified and miserable, I found out if you keep away from everyone, they keep away from you. So, only reason I never tried to transfer is because when my mother worked late, I go home at lunch to check on Nana. I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that if I went to another school. There must be something. There must be some okay kids here, I said, looking around. There are, but since I spent my whole freshman year staying away from everyone, by the time I was a sophomore, everyone else already had friends. She smiled wryly, criticizing herself. It isn't just that people in New York are unfriendly. It's also that I've been unfriendly to people in New York, till now. I smiled at her. Till now? I repeated. After lunch, since I was going to meet Annie at her apartment late that afternoon, I went to the what is this word? Gagahesh Museum and tried not to think too hard about what might have happened at our school while I was safely looking at paintings. But I just kept thinking about it anyway, and about how depressing a lot of Annie's life seemed to be, and about how I wished there was something I could do to make it more cheerful. The day before, after Annie got out of school, we'd gone to the New York Botanical Garden, where we'd been a couple of times with my parents, and Annie went wild, walking up and down the greenhouse aisles, smelling the flowers, touching them, almost talking to them. I'd never seen her so excited. "Oh, Liza," she'd said, "I never even knew this place was here. Look, that's an orchid. Those are impatient. Those are impotens, impatines, I don't know, IMPATIENS. That's some of these flowers I don't know the names of. That's a bromeliad, BROMELIAD, brome, or bromeliad. It's like a place we used to go to in California. It's so beautiful. Oh, why can't there still be flowers? Oh, why can't there be more flowers in New York? More green things. As soon as I remembered that, standing halfway up the spiral ramp that runs through the middle of the Gagahish, I knew what I'd do. I'd buy Annie a plant and take it to her apartment as a sort of thank you present. Thank you for what? I didn't really know, but, well, that didn't matter. Well, that didn't seem to matter much as I rushed back outside to find a florist I found one that had some flowering plants in the window. "Do they have these in California?" I asked the man. Sure, he said. "They have many, all over." That didn't tell me much, but I was too nervous to ask any more questions, even to ask him what kind of plant that one was the one that I wanted was. It had thick, furry leaves and was covered with light blue flowers. By then I knew that blue was Annie's favorite color, so I decided it probably wouldn't matter what kind of plant it was. The pot had, hideous pink tinfoil wrapped around it. But I took that off in the slow elevator in Annie's building and stuffed it into my pocket. I remembered to knock at Annie's door. She'd told me the buzzer didn't work. And in a few minutes, a quavery voice said, "Who is it?" "Liza Winthorpe," I said, and then said it again, louder, because I heard something rattling under where the peephole is. When the door opened, I had to look down suddenly because I'd been ready to say hello to someone at eye level. But the person who opened the door was a tiny, fragile-looking woman in a wheelchair. She had wonderful, bright blue eyes and a little puckered mouth that somehow managed to look like Annie's, probably because of the smile. You must be Annie's friend. The woman friend. The woman beamed at me, and as soon as I heard her accent, I remembered that Annie's grandmother had been born in Italy. Sure enough, the woman said, "I'm her Nana." Her grandma. Shoo. No, her grandma. Come in. Deftly, she maneuvered the wheelchair out of the doorway so I could step inside. Okay, there we go. Annie, she helped her mama make the turk. Annie's grandmother said. It was a second or so before I realized that the turkey, was the turkey, but the wonderful smell that struck me as soon as I was inside told me my guess was right. We make him the day before. We make him the day before. It was one word, one beautiful word, day before. When she said it, it sounded like a song. So on Thanksgiving, we can have a good time. Come in.
Alert, low battery.
Your friend, she's here. What a pretty flower. African violet. No, I don't know, I said, bending a little closer so Annie's Nana could see the plant's flowers. I know a thing about plants, but I just found out Annie liked them. So I brought her one. I'd never have dared. admit to most people, most kids anyway, that I brought Annie a present. But this lovely old lady didn't seem to think there was anything odd about it. She clasped her garbled hands together, her gnarled hands together, and it was then that I knew where Annie had gotten her laugh, as well as her smile. Because that was when her grandmother laughed in exactly the same way. Annie should be happy, Nana said, her bright eyes twinkling into mine. Very happy. You wait till you see her room. She loves flowers. Annie, look, she said, turning her head toward Annie, who had just come out of the kitchen, her hair braided and wrapped around her head, a dim towel around her middle, her face red from the heat of the oven. Look, your friend. She bought you a friend. Nana and I chuckled at her joke as Annie looked at the violet and then at me. I don't believe this, Annie said, her eyes meeting mine above her grandmother's softly gleaming white hair. You brought me an African violet? I nodded. Happy Thanksgiving. Oh, God, Eliza. I suppose you're going to tell me this is part of the real world too, right? Well, I said, feigning modesty. It's real, all right. Real world? What? Real world? What do you talk about? Annie, you pushed me in the kitchen so I can help your mama. Then you go with your friend and talk. Annie winked at me as much as she took the back of her grandmother's chair. And Nana reached out and squeezed my hand, and Annie started to wheel her past me. I like you, Liz, she said, pronouncing my name the way Chad often did. You make my Annie happy. She's so sad sometimes. Nana made the corners of her mouth drop down like a tragedy mask. Ugh, young girls, they should laugh. Life's bad enough when you're grown. You might as well laugh when you're young. You teach my Annie that, Liz. Okay? Okay, I said, looking at Annie. I think I held up my hand when I said it. You promise? Good. Annie? She's laughed not this week since she's laughed more this week since she met you. Annie wheeled her grandmother into the kitchen, and I stood awkwardly in the hall, looking down its dingy walls into the living room. I could see part of the very worn carpet that must have been bright red, and a lopsided sofa with some stuffing working its way out around the edges, and a couple of patches, and a framed photo of the Roman Colosseum hanging on the wall next to a cross with a dry palm leaf.